I am Marion Dove. I am the chair of the Department of Family Medicine. Je suis Marion Dove. Je suis la directrice du département de médecine de famille. And I'm really happy to see such a large group of people here for a launching event in 2023 in our Indigenous program in the Department of Family Medicine. This is a joint event with the Indigenous Health Professions Program. And we are thrilled to have an Inuk speaker for you tonight. I think it will be a fascinating evening, and at the end we have some refreshments. So I welcome you all to stay through the talk and then stay afterwards to have some food and drink with us. Alors, avec ça, je vais passer la parole à la vice-doyenne pour les affaires autochtones du bureau du Provost. So I'd like to turn it over to Celeste Pedri-Stade to say a few words of welcome.
Not much to say other than thank you everybody for inviting me. Anamoniwi Inuk Qaujimajatuqangit Nizadakangaya Laktamalak First Nation and Doji. I'm Celeste. I'm an Anishinaabe Ojibwe from Laktamalak, otherwise known as Nizadakang, place of poplars, born and raised in northwestern Ontario. I'm really glad that the Office of Indigenous Initiatives can co-host this event today. We're really fortunate to have Reepa here. We're fortunate as well just to have a really great team in our office. We're a new team right now. I've only been here, I think, and this is only my second time here, I believe. I was here earlier this fall, and it's a really wonderful opportunity to come together and celebrate just the wealth of Indigenous excellence and knowledge that we have here at McGill. We're very fortunate also to have my team members here with me, Anika Anderson, and as well Richard Budgell, who is sometimes with us in the Office of Indigenous Initiatives and sometimes is in the faculty I think he's in the urban department.
He is.
Yes.
Don't be fighting over him.
Yeah. So again, I want to say that, this is part of our institutional commitment to what we call the 52 calls to action, which is our institutional response to truth and reconciliation. And again, creating these spaces to come together and learn and listen is, I think, fundamental to achieving all of those goals that we have. So, miigwech, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to introduce Professor Richard Budgell, who is a professor in the Department of Family Medicine, and he is going to be animating the evening. I think you say moderating in English, but animating is a Montreal word. So I would like to turn it over to you, Richard, with many thanks for organizing this evening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dove. So I'm going to try to animate the evening. I am so honored, so honored and pleased to be able to host Reepa Evic-Carleton with us tonight. I've spent most of the day with her with great pleasure. She spoke to students of mine in the Inuit Health course that I'm currently teaching earlier today. And I think people were just immeasurably touched and learned many things, and I know we're going to have exactly that experience again. I have been in family medicine now for 2.5 years, going close to 3 years. I was one of a couple of Indigenous people who have come to work here with my honored colleague, Professor McCumber, who's here this evening also. My not-so-secret agenda has been to expand the space for Inuit knowledge and pedagogy and sharing, and I think we've made a fair bit of progress in that regard. Mm-hmm. And Reepa is very much part of that because she teaches in a way that I think is characteristically Inuit, because it is a way of just sharing knowledge amongst ourselves, amongst all of us, and welcoming people into that kind of sharing. And the qulliq is part of that kind of experience. So I just had to put on my coat because it's a thing. And But just to say, you know, I was feeling a little bit cold, Reepa, so I had to put on my coat. So is there anything you think we could do to help warm up the space so it won't be so cold anymore? What about the qulliq?
I will do that.
Take care of Richard.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm so honored to be here with you all wonderful people. And thank you for Anika and Karen and Richard and everybody that had a part in making this possible. I'm very happy. So I was born at the time when my parents were still living on the land. And the qulliq was one of the tools that my mother used every single day. And so Richard asked me to light the qulliq so he can get warmer. And it did help us that way back in the time. The qaujimaq that we lived in the winter months was, people say, like a salt house, you know, one room dwelling unit, and the back is where we slept, and there's two sides on each side, and that's where your cups and the qulliq and everything else had their place. So the qulliq that my mother and my ancestors used were much bigger than this. This is a miniature size. And inside the qaujimaq were more than one. You know, there was one on this side and one over here and one near the entranceway. We only had the one entryway inside the qaujimaq. So I'm going to light it. It takes a few minutes, so be patient with me. I'll talk as I'm lighting it. The wick that my ancestors used were two plants mixed together, collected from the land, cotton, and also this hard texture. We call it manik in Inuktitut. So you mix the two plants together, and that makes a wick. The oil inside the qulliq was fat, seal fat, blubber, whale blubber, or animal like caribou fat, or even fish oils that was rendered or were rendered for the qulliq, and the fish must have been hard, because how much fish would you need so that there could be oil inside your qulliq? And I remember my mother cutting up the seal blubber and boiling it, or, you know, pounding, so the oil would come out of it, so it could go inside her qulliq. Imagine how much work that was. On everybody's part, the husband had to go get it, the animal, and then the oil, the blubber you had to work at pounding it or boiling it just so that you could have the oil inside the qulliq. And so my memories of that time, my mom would boil it and then let it cool down enough so she could handle it again by squeezing more oil out of the texture of the seal blubber. So, and that was our treat. That texture, that whatever was left over became our treat as children. And you know, when I first had my bacon, it reminded me of of that time when I was a child, and my mother would give me that leftover texture. And so the qulliq really did allow us to survive in an environment that is cold and dark in the winter months. It really allowed Inuit to survive and to have light at night and to have the warmth because we didn't have heaters. And you could just switch the lights on. So that's where the light, that was our light. And to cook with it, to melt ice with it, and to dry the clothing. They had racks, and then there was a hook over the flames that, people made their bannock over this. People cooked with it. And so I'm grateful for my ancestors because, who else can do this? Who else could have done what they did for us to thrive? Because Inuit really did survive in their own way, with very little possessions, very little material things. So people lived well, simple, but a good life. It was a good life, I can say that. We didn't have the stresses that we have today. People always, our ancestors always had to think about survival because you can't just go to a store to pick up food or buy gas or whatever. We had to do with what we were given, and it was enough. It was enough to live a good life. And so I'm very, very thankful for the wisdom, the strength, the resilience, the ability to be able to get up every day regardless of what they faced every single day. And my memories of that time are precious to me because they're no longer. People don't live off the land anymore. So when I was about 6 years old, my family was forcefully moved from this beautiful, beautiful place that I called my home because that's where I was born. And we just didn't get the doctor or the nurse to help people, having their babies. There was always a midwife there, a local midwife. And the local midwife helped the women. And the midwife that my mother had was raised by my great-great-grandparents because she lost her parents. And she grew up with my great-great-grandparents as a child into her adult life. And she became my Aunaliak, who helped my mother during the time I was born. And the relationships were formed for life. Like, I call her my Aunaliak, and she called me Aunaliak also. And if Richard was born at that time, Richard's name or term would be Angusia. A boy would be Angusia and a girl would be Aunaliak. So that's just how Inuit always practiced. And when I was born, she said some things to me as she held me, and she would let me know what she said, and they were positive things that she wanted me to carry. When I grew up, she wanted me to be able to help and do good things in my lifetime. That's just how Inuit practice these different stages of life. And also, I didn't talk about the name. I carry another name. My Inuktitut name is Sauluapik. Sauluapik was a, a female who passed away just around the time I was going to be born. And Inuit still practice that, giving the names of someone. So I've given my children Inuit names. And Anika has an Inuk name too that we gave her. And so it just builds relationships. It keeps you connected, and it's always, most of the time, it's very positive. There may be some, I don't know, but my experiences have been very positive. So that man who was married to Sauluapik, he's passed away now. He passed away after I had moved to the south. He would call me Aipakuluk, meaning I was named after his wife. And you know, as a little girl, as a teenager, even into my adult life, he would save the best part of an animal, or he would buy some treats from the Hudson's Bay Company, and he would save them for me. So that's just how Inuit way is still practiced, which I'm really, really, grateful about, because we did lost a lot. We did lost a lot during the past years. And I'm getting a little. So I also like to share about the role of a little girl. If things were the way they always were, I would have learned to become a mother, a wife, and contributing to the rest of Inuit society, because we're small in number. And this little camp I talk about so passionately was like maybe 10 families per, like, the camp. And so Inuit were scattered all across where I come from, the Cumberland Sound. Richard's area or region is different from mine. We're different regions, but where I come from, they were scattered all across the Cumberland Sound. And so life continued that way for a long time, until we started having, like, changes happening to us rapidly, very rapidly. I think the real first change that happened to us as a family was my oldest brother was picked up from this little camp and taken to residential school. And it happened to many, many families, not just mine. And after that, the forced relocations happened. So I was just too young to remember all of that, but I've lived the effects of it. I'm an intergenerational impacted Inuk. And I did go to school after we were forcefully moved. So from this beautiful camp, we didn't have, the houses were not built yet in the settlement where we were moved. So my memories are cold, because we were put inside a canvas tent when it was getting colder. So my memories are cold. Our food changed because the men were not hunting from the land anymore. The diet that we always had wasn't, we were not eating it every day. We were now starting to eat processed food, canned food, or sugar and flour. Those were around, but not like it became after we were moved. So, and then I had to go to school. My learning life experiences and watching my mother, they're gone now because I'm in school for the full day like many other children. So the learning that would have happened, I lost. I didn't learn to sew clothing made from animals or clean the skins or, you know, all of what I need, I would have learned if I kept learning in that way of old life. So we did lose a lot. And the changes that happened to us, a lot of them had negative impacts on my people. And as a teenager, I couldn't understand what had happened to us, why things were the way they were now, and why the gap started to happen between our parents. And I felt like caught in two worlds, the old way and then this new way that we were learning. And so it's confusing. And into my teens, I struggled with my identity. And I wasn't experimenting with drugs or alcohol. I didn't need it because once I got over those changes, I knew what I was going to become if I had kept going in my schooling. I only went to like the grade 8. I wasn't sent away to go to school like a lot of my people did to go to high school or, you know, residential school. I wasn't sent away. My two siblings did. So once I knew what I wanted to become in this new world, I really wanted to become a nurse. That was my goal. That was my plan. And I was like happy. I was content. And I felt like my mind, my spirit, my will was one. I was happy and content. And I did look after myself because I didn't experiment with what my peers were doing. So I'm thankful that my early years really did help me. They really did. Even though I did feel lost, like many other Inuit, I had a place to fall back to, my early years, which we're told are very informative, those first few years, as to how we're going to be when we get to be adults. So I feel very blessed to have had that experience because life changed dramatically for us. Social issues, drugs and alcohol, the violence that I never witnessed in this camp, never, because we were allowed to be kids and we were like child rearing, looking after kids was the most important for the adults around us. So when things really changed for me, because things happen, you know, with what was happening, something did happen to me at my early teenager years, and it did really impacted me like it has with many, many people. I married younger and I started having children at a younger age, like in my late teens, but that was young. And it was also kind of normal for Inuit. But I witnessed and lived through a lot of abuse from my first husband. So I know the helplessness and hopelessness that people feel when they're caught in that. And I know because, you know, there's very little resources in our community still today, which is very unfortunate. We didn't have shelters. I couldn't just run to a shelter with my kids. So I felt very, very trapped. And to leave a husband was something that wasn't practiced easily, or, it wasn't something that was done too much at the time, the odd one, But I'm glad I got away. I'm really glad I got away. And it's taken me a long time to heal from those traumas. But life was never like that before, that I can remember, because you're just content, you're happy. And so Richard, I'm kind of sidetracked because I wasn't going to share about that, but I did. Maybe just to say that, whatever has happened to us, right? We can always get back on track. And that's what I've chosen to do. And I've chosen to share. It's something I do. I've chosen to share, even though none of you may have had those experiences. You'll meet somebody who has, and maybe you can help in a way, because we don't know how much impact we have on each other. We really don't. And because of things that just happened to us, like it kind of rolls, and it couldn't be stopped. So we have our experiences. And the experiences, when you do recover, it's like your strength now. It's like you understand. It's like you want to give back. You want to help fellow human beings. And that's the road I've taken long before I ever moved to the South. When I got out of that abusive relationship, I chose what I'm going to do. And I think my Annalia had a part in it. My elders had a part in it. It wasn't just me. And my creator had a part in it. Like many people have helped me. And so I just want to go back to my childhood, because we had friends, like we had other children that we played with all the time. There was this one little boy I was very close to. His name was Johnny. And we played a lot together. We were the same age. And one day he was no longer there. And I never knew till about 2 years ago what happened to him. Never knew. And I never thought to ask what happened to him. So he was taken away to residential school and never returned. He passed away in somewhere, I don't know where. I grieved him when I learned of that. Even though it was so many years ago, I did grieve him for a period, and now I'm good. I can share. So these are the experiences a lot of our people. And so, Richard, you had something to say there for a minute?
I was going to say, I don't think you're sidetracked at all. Every little journey that you take us on is connected to other journeys and connected to a path. And you're so much better at this than I am. But you've had a lot more practice.
I had a lot more practice.
I've only done it once. But you are a lot better at it than I am. And we were talking about, so can I tell people what this is burning?
Yeah.
So because seal, whale rendered oil or fish oil harder to get here, this is Crisco, which burns hot,
Yeah,
but it burns.
it does.
It
Yeah.
does burn. But I think part of my problem probably is the wick,
Mm.
because I haven't had the plants. I was using cotton wool, so I haven't had the right plants. So I probably need to get the right plants.
And practice and
And
practice
practice.
till you get perfect. Because the men did carry their qulliqs too. It wasn't just the women's role to care for the qulliq. The men would go out on these hunting trips because that's what they did. They provided for their families and their camp members. So they would carry a miniature little qulliq that they would use when they're away. And they would use it for light in the winter months. From May till maybe end of July, we have 24-hour sunlight. So it's hard to go to sleep with that. And you want to walk and go do things that you enjoy on the land. But in the winter months, men had it too. And I remember riding on the qamutik, which is a sled that is pulled by dogs. Riding on the qamutik, Inuit always went from this winter camp to summer camp, or spring camp, or summer or fall. We were always moving. So during the spring camp, we would travel by dog team. And as a little girl, we're riding on this sled with all of our possessions on it, and I happened to fall off it. And I thought they would leave me, but somebody saw me, and they came back. I did try running. I remember trying to run, but I couldn't keep up to it. And so that was how we traveled in the winter and spring, and by boat when the ice had melted or broken up. So I have this wonderful memory of walking the tundra with my father, caribou hunting. And you see for miles, it's a beautiful day. You smell the land because it's so fresh. And the birds are singing away. And my father said, let's stop, have tea and have bannock, and we can go again after the break. So we are having this little break, and a caribou walked by, and my father said, you shoot that one. Oh no, I didn't want to. I didn't want to kill this beautiful animal, but he insisted, and so he gave me the rifle. I must have been like 12 or 13, and I closed my eyes. I didn't want to look. I closed my eyes and shot it on the leg, so my father had to kill it for good. But I'm not a hunter. Many Inuit women are, but I could never become a hunter. I love collecting. I loved being out. I love berry picking or clam digging, or collecting moss, collecting the plants, but I'm not a hunter, and I would be so bored, and I would hide inside the cabin of a boat so I don't see the animals being killed. So that's just me, but
But how did that caribou taste?
excellent. It's still my favorite food. I still eat my country food. I have to have my country food because any other kinds of food aren't going to do it, if I don't have that country food. So I always have a supply at home, or Inuit organizations in Ottawa that will supply the Inuit there on Inuit Day, which is coming up. If anybody is interested to go, February 11 is their Inuit Day at the Ottawa Inuit Children's Center. It's called Inuk Qaujimajatuqangit now. Karen was instrumental in forming in from the scrap, from really the beginning, and it's now a really big agency. There's also Inuit Qaujimajatuqangit that is still there, and that's how I started working for Inuit Qaujimajatuqangit Inuit as a community worker. So I also co-founded the Inuit Trauma and Addiction Program in Ottawa from early 2000 when the funding ran out in 2016. So that was a really good resource for my people, and much needed, because of the traumas that we've gone through. We really need more services for my people. There was not one young people who died by suicide when I was a child into my teens. It wasn't done. And I can see why many young people are killing themselves with no real help, with very little resources in these smaller communities. The feelings of hopelessness and helplessness are very real. And also using substances doesn't help. It does help for, a period, but it becomes another issue that they have to deal with. With what's happening in our world today, it's scary. It is a scary thought. I was invited to the mission, the homeless not the mission, the Salvation Army in Ottawa recently. Just from overdose alone, we had a memorial service for over 20 people that have died. So it's an epidemic we're facing with the fentanyl on the streets. It's horrible. It wasn't around when I was or any substances. It wasn't around, and it's something that you don't grow up there, so it wasn't around. So these came from, it's being shipped from the south. And so
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make it better? How do we make it so that fewer Inuit youth will take that path, or help Inuit youth recover from having been on that kind of path?
Yeah, more services, make these services more available. We really need these services. We really need Inuit or whoever, Inuit in particular, because I've been taught that we are going to be the ones decolonizing our people. I really believe that. We've gone through a lot, and colonization and assimilation, there's all these that have happened to us that made us question ourselves or made us feel lesser. My people did make a mistake of, because when the white people started coming up, they looked up to them with more material possessions, more knowledge, even though they were very knowledgeable in their own way. And then I always struggled with why. Why did my parents not refuse my brother, my siblings? Why did they not refuse when they were relocated? Because it was force. It was force. They were promised better things when in actuality things may have improved, but not everything. We lost a lot in that time. and still are losing a lot. But, you know, I think there's a comeback to take our rightful place. We have to, for our survival, to be equal with you and everybody else in different ways, because we have a lot to learn from each other. My area, in my community, there was a hospital built. I was sharing because many people became sick after contact with the white people from like contacting TB or other illnesses. There was an epidemic. People were dying and dying. And so the hospital was built. And I'm glad there was a hospital, there was a medical intervention, because my mother was sent away to go get treatment for her TB. My elder that I highly respect and learn from was treated for meningitis. The doctor that was in my settlement sent by air to get the medicine she needed because it wasn't there. And it came at the right time. She was 9 years old. She's still alive, and she's really taught us many things. She was given a doctorate degree from a university, Dalhousie University, somebody that she's very skilled and she's very connected spiritually. And so my people are very spiritual. We're very spiritual beings, and we sense things very easily. We're very much like, what's the word? Yeah. So that's that's what my elder. She's very in tune and very wise, and has many life experiences that she shares freely. And she's been very grateful for that doctor. The doctor's dead now. So I'm going to share you a book, and the doctor's mentioned in this book. This is Sunrise over Pengnutang, which that's my community. That's where I went to school. And so the doctor helped many people. He would travel by dog team to get to the small camp, like my camp, to bring medicine or to help somebody who was ill. So he heard a lot about my great-grandmother. Her name was Asivak. Maybe also share a bit about her and her husband, because she couldn't bear children. She was hemorrhaging a lot, so she couldn't have children. And one day she and her husband went to the guy who helps people with these very real needs. And after they saw this person who was able to help, she conceived my grandmother, the only child. Katu was her name. And so she was very skilled in midwifery. And this doctor went to see her with an interpreter and interviewed her and asked her, because he was very curious, he's a medical doctor. So he asked, how do you prepare yourself when you're going to examine a female? So she went like this. She rolled up her sleeve, and then she said, this is what I do. I chip my fingernails right down to the skin, so I'm not going to scratch the female I'm examining. That's what I do. I wonder what he was thinking when she answered his question. I wonder what went through his mind. So this doctor fell in love with my people. He really did. So the nurses that were brought up from the South lived with my people, my mother's generation. They bonded and respected, and these relationships last. If they were still alive today, somebody would go to my community from England to visit the people that they loved. So that's how it was at that time. And I know we can do this. We can do this more than they did, because we're more advanced now. Hopefully we can learn and help each other, because we are faced with real crisis in many ways here in the South. So it took me 2 years to get comfortable with living in the South, because there's a cultural shock that happens to you when you move from a very small community. I would walk down the street, because I was hired by a National Inuit Association. I would walk amongst all these people, and we love smiling, like we love to laugh, and I would expect a smile, but not everybody's like that. So I learned things like a lot on my own, that it's different down here, and it's bigger, and there's so our communities are small. So I always like sharing about my great-grandmother, because she was very instrumental to her people during that time. Her husband, my great-grandfather, learned from the whalers to speak English, and he became an interpreter also. So the two were leaders in their own thriving camp. I never met her, my great-grandmother. And we have some, not all native blood in us, because there's been contact for many, many years. So I have some Scottish blood in me, both from my parents. So we're all people. And how do we become better, By respecting each other and living that good life. And if we've had experiences where it's been negative, we don't need to stay there. I've made a choice not to stay there. So we talk about reconciliation, like Richard or somebody was saying. It's been tough, I can tell you that, because a lot of things were imposed upon us, and we lost a lot. Not everything, because there's always good in everybody, right? Whoever we are. So the more we can live and help each other. And Inuit are very resilient, and we do bounce back. And I think just because of where we were placed, I think we have a lot to give to the rest of the world. We do. We just learn. People who's never gone to school or training have skills to put things together. We've always made things in our own ways and made things work and last. Look at the qulliq. Look at the beautiful qulliq. I use it at home. And if electricity goes out, I still have light. I can cook. I can learn to cook. I've never done it. I would love to learn to make bannock over it. In May, we were, because of that bad storm, I was out of electricity for 11 days. We were told only maybe tonight it'll come on, maybe tomorrow. That day never came until after 11 days. And you know, my husband was still living with us at the time, but because of his condition, he wasn't able to do the task work he's always done. He was very skilled in many, many ways. We're living in a farm, so a little bit outside Ottawa, and it's an old farmhouse, and so we heat by wood in the winter. I love our wood stove. I love it. I just find it so cozy and warm, and I don't need to breathe whatever forced air is blowing. You know, I just love, I think because of my early childhood, I just love the wood stove. So we have grown-up children, but you know, they have their own lives too, and our youngest boy works and my grandkids work, so sometimes I was alone with my husband, and things had to keep moving along. Like, I never learned to start a generator. I was scared of it, you know, but I had to. One day I just said, you gotta do it. You have freezers, you have refrigerators, you have to learn. So I forced myself to learn. And so I was, you know, switching this cord to here and there, and the sump pump was filling up, and so we had to manually carry the pail of water. It was a lot of work. One day, I started to think, when is this going to end? You know, when is our power coming back? You know, and then it was like a still small voice said, look what your ancestors did. Look how they survived. You still can go to a store. You can go get your groceries. There's lots you can do. Your ancestors did not have that, and they survived. They carried you this far. And so my complaining, you know, out it went, and I just did what I had to do, with help, of course. So it's that. It's what's inside of us, in each one of us. We do have something real here. Sometimes it's covered by lots of things, but there's a realness in us, in all of us. Could be schooling that just covered what's real in there, could be your life experiences, it could be many things. But the more real we can get, the more I think we're good, the more we can help each other, and just, you know, there's still lots of positive things in our world. There are. Our world is still beautiful. I still find lots of beauty in it. Lots of beauty. And the more we work on getting rid of whatever is hindering us from being the best we can be, the better we're going to be, and the better we're going to, you know, live well together, whoever we are. So I'm going, what time is it?
It's 6:30.
Okay.
So maybe we'll ask if some of these good people have
Yes.
questions for a little bit. I've just been thinking how glad I am that they noticed that you fell off the qulliq and went and got you.
I know, an animal, polar bear, or a wolf could
And
have.
this would have been a lot duller this evening. It's just Are there people who might have a little question? We would be, yes, sir. Speak loud.
That important organization that you found to help the youth, why was the government funding stopped in 2016? Which politicians are to blame for that?
Why did the funding stop?
The funder, our funder no longer existed. So there was a lot of work to get other funding, but who we were associated with, because we were not on our own. Like, we were managed by another higher body. So there was a lot, I think a lot of politics. It wasn't just youth, it was Inuit. The age was from 18 and older. So we used the standardized assessment tools that are used across Canada, and a lot of trauma, severe trauma was.
What level of government was able to come in to help you?
Not at that time. It's now slowly starting up again from the same agency. So it's been slow to come back. It's now operating again. And I go talk to them once a week. I could work full time, but because of my husband's condition, I was the main caregiver. And so I'm now slowly getting back to working a little bit. So I'm happy to say it's starting up again from a smaller scale. So my hope is that it's going to grow and grow, because it was doing lots of good work. And I developed Inuit history, talking about these things in a therapeutic way, and it really worked. So we know it can work. We brought an elder, a couple, every cycle for a week, and we just let them work with the Inuit clients, and it did a lot of good. So that elder that we would bring has mentored me. She's been my mentor. Yeah, and we would go out on the land, which was wonderful because we're land people. And we would take them to the Quebec side and work with them. Also use the land, the lakes, and just being out away from the business of a city. It did wonders. We did a lot of good work. And
have people gone back to the town that you grew up in, the area you grew up in? Has it been resettled at all?
I didn't hear.
People gone back to Pangerton.
Gone back to when you were removed at age 6?
Oh yeah. I've gone back.
You're talking about to the camp?
Yeah.
Site.
I've gone back many times. Even after I had my first children, my parents would take us out, and we would camp from May till maybe September. Yeah, us growing up, being in school, they would take us out. I'm glad they did, because I got both, the formal schooling and then what I needed from my parents. I've always gone back. And I've been very privileged to experience elders telling me their stories. Because when elders tell their stories, my puzzle pieces, just get put back together. And I think that's why we need to hear stories. As hard as some are, because that's our truth. That was our truth, and it's up to us individuals to work with that. If we're triggered, we need to work with that. If we have flashbacks, we need to work with that. But not everybody's ready, so it depends on individuals, But in order for me to come where I am, I've needed to work to pass these things. I came south with post-traumatic stress disorder just because of the experiences I had with my first husband. I didn't know. People didn't talk about it. I functioned well outside, but in there, things have changed for me. I struggled with panic attacks. I really did. And this elder really helped me because she had them too before, but she had passed that. She would teach me to breathe. She would teach me to focus, and these are the things I learned from Algonquin College when we were taking the training before the treatment center opened. We had to take trauma and addiction studies through the college, and I'm like, oh my God. The symptoms, I recognize what I was learning.
We're immensely grateful for this evening that you have given to us. I believe Dr. Dove may have something she'd like to say to close off, and also actually probably give after that the last word to my colleague, Professor McCumber. No? Okay. Just because we are on his territory, so it might be good for Ganiganga to give us the last word for the wonderful day that we've had on his territory. So, but Dr. Duff.
Thank you, Richard, for letting me thank Reepa for this wonderful evening that you've given us. I think we all enjoyed very much listening to you with your face illuminated by this beautiful qulliq.
Yeah.
So we wanted to thank you from McGill University, from the Department of Family Medicine and the Office of Indigenous Affairs, with this basket of yummy chocolates
Oh,
to help your
wonderful.
waistline. And there's also a little lanyard that says Department of Family Medicine, and to keep you warm, a little toque and a scarf. And now we'll have Alex McCumber.
So Reepa, pleasure to have you in our territory of Tiohtià:ke. We call this place here Tiohtià:ke, and it's part of Ganyange, the land of the Flint. And we're the people of the Flint, the Ganyankahaga, also known as the Mohawks. And we're part of the Confederacy of the Six Nations, the Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse. So it's a pleasure to welcome you to the territory, and glad that you were able to be here and that you had a good time here. And thank you so much for the sharing. You brought tears to my eyes many times in the talk. Just so touching to the core of what's important in life.
That's
And
right.
thank you for that. And so I want to bring a little gift from Ganawagi to give to you, because we're the community that's just 15 minutes away from here. So
Okay.
we kind of watch over the territory and block the bridges when we have to.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so this is a beadwork that comes from Ganawagi, from an elder who's passed, and one of the stores has her collection. And so I went there because I wanted to give you something that's really homegrown from the community to remember your visit in our territory. And you're always welcome back anytime.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Pleasure to
Yeah.
have you.
Thank you. Wow. It's beautiful.
So there's food. There's light food over on that side of the room. Everyone is welcome. I think we'll probably have more than enough. A wonderful contribution from the Office of Indigenous Initiatives. So we're very grateful for that, and just so grateful for the fabulous evening that we've had. So, glad you've all been able to be here.
Yeah. Just to say that just like my mother would always leave a little light in the corner for us children, I'm leaving it on for a few minutes to say we all have a light, right? And it's our responsibility to keep it burning. It's our responsibility, each one of us. We need that. and we do matter, and we do really have impact on each other, whether it's good or bad. So I choose to use the good way, and we all have that within us. So thank you so much for listening. I really enjoyed this night. Yeah.